Welcome to Coffee with Kish. Today I want to start out by thanking my audience. I've had a great time making these videos so far. I didn't know that I would like making them so much. It's still not the easiest thing for me to do. I get nervous. I worry about what people will think. Obviously, I don't have any control over how people react to these videos, and people have very strong opinions about religion, and sometimes I fall afoul of that. I think maybe sometimes I'm misinterpreted, or sometimes I get things wrong, but on the whole, people have been very supportive. I've had the opportunity to do some really exciting things, like go on Mormonism Live with Bill Reel and Radio Free Mormon. I've had the chance to go on Backyard Professor with my friend, the Backyard Professor, Carrie Schertz. And on each occasion, my audience has grown a little bit, and so I'm very thankful to them. And I'm thankful for all the people who take the time to add thoughtful and substantive comments below the videos. I know, that's not something you have to do, but it's really exciting for me when anything I've said in a video actually got you thinking along certain lines, and you felt free to share your ideas with me. So really, thanks a whole lot. It means a lot to me, and I hope we can continue to grow this channel and build a larger audience. And not just an audience, but I guess a community of participants, people who feel like this is one place they can go online to have fun learning about Mormonism, thinking a little bit more about Mormonism, discovering new things about it, and getting a new perspective, a different perspective on it than you've had before. And I hope that you feel that you know that I no longer affiliate with the LDS Church, but I do my very best to be fair and positive. I'm not out to attack the LDS Church. I'm really here to talk about Mormonism, which, as you know, I define more broadly than just the LDS Church itself. But I'm also not here to convince people to join the LDS Church. Still, I think Mormonism is really, really interesting. It's inherently interesting. There's so many groovy pieces to it that make it fascinating to me, despite the fact that I quit attending the LDS Church years ago. I continue to be interested in it, and that's not because I feel the continuing need to fight against the LDS Church or to work through the psychology of my departure from the LDS Church, but just because, dang it, this stuff is really, really wild, very cool. Today I'm going to talk about my missionary experience. This is something that's still dear to me. There are a lot of people, who, as they leave the LDS Church, they think, wow, why did I waste 2 years of my life trying to convince people to join the LDS Church? I could have been doing better things with my time. I could have gotten through college earlier, gotten into the working world a lot earlier, made more money, but because I delayed my progress in life, it delayed my entry into the adult world, I've suffered all of these setbacks as a result. And it's not like I haven't thought about the possible advantages of me entering the adult world earlier, going off to college, not going to an LDS university. I ended up going to BYU, finishing a course of study earlier, starting work earlier, and then maybe making more money. But I'll be honest with you, I've never been that practically minded, to be honest with you. I'm not a very practical person. I've always been kind of a head in the clouds idealist, and I also think that for me, because my upbringing was kind of chaotic, because my parents had a difficult marriage and they were separated a lot, and got divorced while I was on my mission. My dad got remarried while I was on my mission. I think that I was kind of delayed a little bit. I was very much trying to figure out my life in the midst of all of this chaos. And so I had terrible attendance in high school. I didn't really have even steady participation in church. I didn't have a clear plan for what would happen in my life after I graduated. And I'm going to tell you a story here that's not uncommon. The church kind of played somewhat of a parental role in my life. It filled a gap where my parents were struggling in their own lives, and they may not have been able always to provide me all the guidance that I needed or wanted at the time. Honestly, I don't even know that I mean, they did give me some guidance. I shouldn't exaggerate. I felt like I had a good relationship, more or less, with both of my parents. It wasn't an uncomplicated one. But I still think that in the midst of that, the LDS Church provided me with this stability. And, after I graduated from high school, I went to a bit of community college because, as I said, I really didn't have a post-high school plan. I wasn't a great high school student. I was absent a lot. And, one day my mother comes up to me and says, you have to do something with your life. So there she is. She is playing a parental role, giving me good guidance. She deserves credit for that. She said, I don't really care what you do, but you need to do something. You have to get a job, go to college, or go on a mission. And now this is really interesting. And I would say it's not characteristic of all LDS parents. And I have to say that I give my parents a lot of props for always being very independently minded and not really letting the church boss them around so much. I know I put that in a negative way. Some people would say they weren't obedient to their church authorities. I tended to think of it always as them being very strong and independently minded. But my mother didn't say, "Oh, you have to go on a mission." My dad didn't say you have to go on a mission. Now, remember, they're pioneer stock. My dad served a mission. His dad served a mission. This was kind of a family tradition. My mother's dad served a mission. Her brothers served missions. My mother's brothers served missions. So this is you would think it's like the family tradition, and that's what we would just be doing, and that's what my parents would advocate and push for. But they just weren't that way. They weren't of a mind to say this is what you have to do. Rather, they said, this is an option for you, but you have to make up your own mind. And so I don't know. I was always a little bit of a reflective person. I was interested intellectually in church things. Remember, I read Hugh Nibley before I went on my mission and became interested intellectually in what the LDS Church was about. I read Mormon doctrine. I wasn't a huge reader, I'll be honest with you. I would read some complex stuff. I would read Shakespeare on my own, William Blake. But I became curious. I became curious about the LDS Church, and I wanted to know, well, what is it that I think about this? Is this religion that I belong to, that I grew up in, that my family raised me in, and that my ancestors followed, is it true? And of course, this question was framed very much in the standard LDS way. I was seeking for the standard LDS testimony experience. I read the Book of Mormon. I prayed about it. I fasted about it. I asked if, the Book of Mormon is not true, expecting an answer that it was. And I had a very strong positive answer, a very strong spiritual impression and even dreams that I felt indicated to me that the Book of Mormon was true and was the Word of God at the time. And that's what propelled me onto the mission field, although my parents didn't really push me out into the mission field by any means. And I think that was all for the best, honestly. I didn't resent being on a mission because no one had pushed me out there. I had freely chosen, and I had chosen on the basis of gaining a kind of classic and very fervent spiritual witness of the truth of the Book of Mormon, the mission of the prophet Joseph Smith, the restoration of the gospel, all of those things I had a conviction were true. And so even though I was a little bit late doing so, I went through the process of preparing to go on a mission. I filled out my papers. I went through a repentance process to make up for the, standard teenage peccadillos. And went through the interviewing process. So I met with my bishop. I met with my stake president. I turned in my papers. I waited to find out where I was going, and I found out by letter, which was the standard way back then. I don't know what it is now. It may still be a letter, but I'm kind of out of the loop. I've been inactive and not affiliating with the LDS Church for some years now, but I received a letter in the mail, and I was called to go to a mission in Southern California. Now, the hilarious part about all of this was that my mother's family is from Southern California, and so I was a little bit disappointed, I have to admit, and I was called English speaking, and so I wasn't called to a foreign language speaking mission, which had higher status by far, and that would even later on kind of affect your dating prospects. Single young women looking for prospective eternal husbands, eternal partners to marry in the temple after their mission. Well, they wanted to date the guys that went on a Russian-speaking mission or some other exotic. Go to Taiwan and speak Chinese. That was really sexy. Whereas you go to California and you speak English, and you did go on a mission, so that is better than not. And the difference between people who go on missions and their prospects for getting married and those who don't is quite a bit different. And I'm not saying that guys who don't serve full missions don't end up getting married in the temple, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I think there is kind of a dating advantage to being a return missionary. And there were a lot of guys who had girlfriends, LDS girlfriends, who kind of pushed their boyfriends out into the mission field by basically telling them straight up, I'm not going to marry you unless you serve an honorable mission. And so I think there were quite a few guys out there whose girlfriends had kind of nudged them out the door. I'm glad I didn't have that. I had a non-LDS girlfriend. My girlfriend was raised Catholic, but she hardly ever attended church. And she wrote me a breakup letter. We called them Dear John letters after I was out in the mission field about 6 months. Was absolutely devastated by it. Shouldn't have been surprised at all. In retrospect, how silly of me. But I had also leaned on her a lot in sort of social chaos and familial chaos of my life. She was kind of a person that I was kind of emotionally dependent on. And I was kind of a crappy boyfriend. So I shouldn't have been at all surprised, but I was nevertheless devastated to lose this girlfriend. But she wasn't pushing me out into the mission field. In fact, her parents tried to talk me out of going on a mission. And I don't think it was because they thought I was going to marry their daughter or anything. I doubt they even really wanted me to marry their daughter. But they genuinely liked me and cared about me. And they thought, hey, this is a big waste of time. Why are you doing this? I think particularly my girlfriend's father was probably a religious skeptic. He'd never told me anything about this. He was a speechwriter in the DC area. But he was kind of an intellectual dude, I would say. I shouldn't call him a dude. And I don't think he thought much of spending 2 years of your life pursuing this religious service for your church. So he tried to talk me out of it a little bit. His wife told him to back off. And I went. I mean, I had a testimony. I had a spiritual witness that the church was true. I received my patriarchal blessing. It was an incredible spiritual experience for me. I deliberately chose a patriarch whom I did not know because I wanted to be assured that my patriarchal blessing wouldn't be shaped in any way by my patriarch knowing me on a personal level. I wanted it to be clear, a clear palette, or clear canvas, I should say. I wanted it to be a clear canvas. I wanted revelation to determine what my patriarchal blessing would say, and it was an amazing patriarchal blessing. I didn't have, to my knowledge, a cookie cutter patriarchal blessing like some people have, and I think my life has been shaped to a certain degree by that patriarchal blessing. So I had these experiences. I went through the temple, and unlike some people who were disturbed by their experience in the LDS temple, I was profoundly moved, and I felt spiritually transformed by my experience going through the temple and taking my endowments. That's the phrase that we use in the LDS Church when we go through the temple. And it's sort of like a higher initiation in a way. You might think of it as like upper degrees of Masonic initiation or something like that, but it's very Christian on that. I think Mormons are Christians. They may be heterodox and not follow the Trinitarian creeds, but they're Christian. They follow Jesus, and Jesus is very important in the temple. Well, I felt very spiritually transformed and elated by my experience in the temple. So I was gung-ho to go. I was terrified, but I was also gung-ho to go. I wasn't going to let anybody stop me, and I made up my mind for myself to go on a mission. I got financial help and people, because I wasn't really prepared growing up. You're supposed to save all of your money to go on a mission, and I didn't, my head wasn't there. I wasn't really prepared, but my family supported me. There were members of my congregation, my ward, who helped me buy suits and all kinds of stuff. The generosity that was poured out for me to get out on a mission, I think I can't really complain ever about the kind of support I received from people in my ward. I had, very conscientious and kind people looking out for me. So I remember staying with my dad right before I left on my mission. My parents were separated, remember. My dad was he had rented the upper level of a house that he was living in, a room. And we prayed together, which is something my dad and I didn't really do much of ever, but we prayed together about my departure on the mission. I flew out to Utah. I stayed, his sister, my aunt picked me up, and I stayed with her before I went into the MTC, and there I was at the Missionary Training Center in Provo, Utah. That's where missionaries go to learn to be missionaries, to learn to teach, and they stay there a few weeks if they're just speaking English on their mission, but they stay a lot longer if they have to speak a foreign language. I got the short version. So I was there in the MTC. I remember one of my instructors, my MTC teacher, was a Skousen, the famous Skousen family. Remember, Cleon Skousen is a Mormon author. He was an FBI agent. He was also kind of a kooky extremist. Excuse me, I'm sorry if that's offensive to you, but from my political point of view, he was an extremist. He was, deeply anti-communist. He was in the Ezra Taft Benson mold of paranoid conspiracy theory anti-communists and kind of radical. And that was my perception. It remains my perception, and you're free to disagree with that. I was kind of used to this sort of thing, and I just thought it was cool I had a Skousen as a teacher in the MTC. Get out into the mission field. I remember first I got to the mission president's home, and in each mission, there's a mission home where the president and his wife live, and the mission president is a male priesthood leader who's in charge of all of the missionaries in the mission, and he has a certain set term of some years that he's the mission president before you cycle out and get a new one. I think it must be something like 3 years, something like that. I actually experienced a change in mission presidents while I was a missionary. So when I arrived, got to the mission home, and I was, again, here I am in Southern California, beautiful weather. I love Southern California. I've always loved Southern California. If I could choose to live anywhere in the world right now, without a doubt, it would be Southern California. Yeah, so I'm at the mission home, and I'm assigned to my first area. My first area is up in the high desert, and I have no idea what that means. The assistants to the president, who were the top-ranking young missionaries who worked beside the mission president, drove me up to my first area and dropped me off at a bus station in the high desert. And I remember very clearly the missionaries coming to greet me, to pick me up, and for me to meet my companion, because all missionaries work in companionships, either 2 guys or 2 gals, 2 ladies. You work in 2s, and you're always together, and you're trying to keep each other, flying right, as the term goes, as the saying goes. And I just remember, because I was on the spiritual high. I had all these big experiences, big spiritual experiences, transformative experiences. I was pumped up by the MTC, and I just thought, oh, I'm going to conquer the world. And then I see these elders coming to greet me at the bus station, and I was sorely disappointed. They looked like a ramshackle bunch of unruly teenagers. And of course, they were dressed as missionaries, but a lot of them were wearing short-sleeved white shirts with the sleeves rolled up. And it almost looked like, they had cigarette packs. And I just remember having that. I don't know what they had. I just know they were wearing sunglasses, and their hair was kind of disheveled, and they just looked sloppy. And I was like, oh my gosh, what is this? Something is wrong here. Something's wrong with these missionaries. They're not good missionaries. And that's because I was all gung-ho and ready to go. And I think my first months in the mission field were very stressful. Some other time I'll tell you some more about my mission. I can't possibly cover it all in one sitting, but I hope you liked those stories. Please like and please subscribe. This is Kish, Coffee with Kish. Thank you guys for watching. Thanks for being a wonderful audience. Thank you for commenting, for liking, for subscribing. All of these things have made this another rich part of my life, and I'm grateful for it. Take care. Coffee with Kish. See you later.